I would love to kind of dive a little bit about the inception story. You know, how you and your wife just kind of like launched this business and like where is it going?
It actually just started by during the pandemic, just giving food away to the neighborhood because we were both essential workers at that time. So we just decided that since we had the means and we might as well just pay it forward to the community. We did a couple more events for some charity work,
Mm.
and then we sort of went away because the pandemic was starting to increase. And then people through social media were like, when's the barbecue coming back? When's the barbecue coming back? And so we're like, all right, well, everyone loves it when it's free. Let's see if people are willing to pay for it. And so we just did our first drop curbside right from our apartment, and folks showed up. And then we did it again and again. Next thing you know, we're working with breweries and local businesses, and people. Then it's just a snowball effect. You just keep saying yes to different opportunities, and they're not all great, but you can't find the good ones without dealing with some of the bad ones.
I've met a lot of businesses that got started during the pandemic, and it's an interesting thing because I think a common thread around it sometimes is a lot of the businesses that were started during the pandemic kind of had an angle of like giving back or helping. Cooking is about nurturing. It's about nostalgia. It's about family. It's about people, right?
100%.
And I think it's one of the biggest, most powerful things that we have as humans. You know, food brings people together. I think barbecue also has that ideal of like it's family style. It's just big slabs of meat. You're bringing people together. Mm-hmm. It's like a very like homey type of feeling, you know?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. That's what it's all about. Is like it's always a conversation starter. Like anytime we're cooking on site anywhere, people will just come up and it just, oh, what's that thing? Like, especially around here, down in Texas, you see them left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
But in Chicago, there's maybe 4 barbecue pits like ours in the entire
Mm-hmm.
city. So that's how we started. Like we still do. We cook for friends and family all the time. And that's what it's all about. We cook the food that we like to eat, and we just hope that everyone else does too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's 100%. It's all about family and serving people, and that's all the work leads up to. That's the fun part, when
Yeah.
you get to serve people, when you get to see them try something that they don't necessarily get to try all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it all worthwhile. That's why the 15, 16-hour days, the sleepless nights, all the stuff that comes with starting a business, that's when it's all worth it. When you finally get to set up and serve people for a few hours and get all that positive feedback, and then you just reset and do it all again.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And you said earlier you guys don't have a lot of industry experience,
Mm-hmm.
but I think like just by virtue of tasting the food, you wouldn't have thought that before. So it's like where did the recipes come from? Where does the inspiration come from?
Well, thankfully, there's been sort of a barbecue renaissance, if you will. It was started by Aaron Franklin years ago in Austin, and it's just sort of taken off from there.
Yeah.
So now in these days, there's books, there's podcasts, there's YouTube, there's all these reference points that weren't available even a few years ago. So it's just a mixture of that and just incorporating things that we like.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the recipes really just come from. It's just trial and error. Can't cook good barbecue without cooking some bad barbecue. And when you find things that you like, you just stick with it and hope that other people do too.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's family, a lot of the cultural influence from the Mexican food that we like to incorporate is there as well. That gives us an angle that not everyone is doing.
Right.
And if I'm being honest, it's probably some of our best stuff, some of my personal favorite. But yeah, we don't have much industry experience, but we definitely have a lot of consumer experience.
Yeah.
You can't make good food without eating good
Eating
food.
good food.
So we do plenty of that.
Yeah. I think historically some of the biggest innovators are always the outsiders, because you kind of come with this unbiased perspective, but you understand like what good food is because you've tried it. And I think like the fusion, I think the cultural fusion element, definitely it's a pretty important angle. I can't even imagine the amount of prep work that has to go on just like doing a big big pop-up. I feel like there's a lot of risk. What is that set up for you guys for like doing a big pop-up? Something's coming up. Like, what's that process like for you guys?
Well, it starts obviously days before the event.
Yeah.
Usually our shopping and prep is all done on one day, and the main cooks are done, another day. And then the hardest part with the pop-up nature, which is one of the reasons we're grateful to have a brewery that allows us to set up shop as a residency, is just packing up all of the gear and moving it to and from each and every time.
Yeah.
So having a base of operations, that takes a lot of the stress out of it.
Yeah.
The briskets, for example, that's a 24-hour process from the
Yeah.
time I'm starting them to the time you're eating them.
Right.
And there's no way to cut corners. It's just, that's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
If you want something fast, there's plenty of options in this town, but the barbecue is not one of them. If the barbecue is being done fast, then it's not being done properly.
What's your favorite menu item that you guys have had in like all of your pop-ups? Curious.
I would have to say that'd probably be when we did the quesabirria tacos.
Ooh.
That one's always well received. And the first time we did it in front of our building, and we had a line down the street.
I bet.
We were just at our apartment, and out of nowhere, like, my cousin actually got the photo of the line because I was too busy to even pay attention to it. And just in hindsight, it still blows my mind that many people will show up for our food to where I can like sell out in 90 minutes. It's like,
I'm not surprised, but it's where'd you get the birria recipe from, huh?
oh, that was 100% my wife. Like I said, most of our best stuff it comes from her. She's the idea woman behind it, and then I just do my best to execute.
I think what's really cool about you guys is like very well complemented, very good flavor diversity, kind of two unique perspectives of the food that you're kind of bringing from two different sides of the continent, right? And it shows, it manifests, and then the brand looks really good. So it seems like you guys are kind of learning as you go, right? Like you're just kind of like adapting every day. What would be some advice that you would give to somebody, perhaps another couple that's like they kind of have an idea, or they feel like they could, but they don't feel like they have what it takes, or they don't know everything that they need to get started, and it's prevented them for years. As somebody who is actually doing it and building it every day and learning, what's the advice that you give somebody like that?
Just go slow. Like, you don't have to go from 0 to 100. Like, cooking for family is different than cooking for 20 people, is different for cooking for 50, 100, and so on. So just start with where you're comfortable. Yeah. And, you don't necessarily have to throw a bunch of money at it and a bunch of other things. Like, you can get a lot done with a little. And I feel like the slow burn burns the longest. So if it's something that you feel inclined to do, for sure, do it. But you don't dive in and get over your head, and then you'll get frustrated and burn out almost immediately. Yeah. So just slowly ramp up. Just, start by cooking for a bunch of friends and family. Throw a real good barbecue or whatever the equivalent is for what you're trying to do. And just make sure that, because it wasn't until a few months ago that my wife and I stepped away from our full-time jobs to pursue this entirely. Yeah. So that's just a necessary evil. You're going to have to do that. There's very few people that can just jump from one to the other.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's almost like a metaphor for cooking good barbecue, like very low and slow, right? Like time just is an ingredient, and you just have to let it kind of do its thing. What was that transition for you guys? Like, now that this started as like a way of helping your community, right? And it kind of, the demand was there, and it's been growing to now where you're actually taking this full step commitment, into this business. Like, what's that transition been for you guys?
It's meant everything. Because a year ago I switched to part-time with my job and was basically running them both 50-50. And to get to a point to where I felt comfortable enough to make that transition and make that jump and have enough people come out and try our food and gain enough interest within the industry and the community, because we've had lots of chefs and restaurants that have really embraced us and taught us things and welcomed us into their kitchens and allowed us to work in their spaces. And at a certain point, like you can get the boat as close to the dock as possible, but sooner or later you have to
You
step
have
off.
to jump.
And that's what we did. And as we progress, one thing leads to another, and we just keep getting more and more opportunities, and we just keep saying yes. And and it's a journey. It blows my mind still to this day, like that people are excited for our food, and we get to do fun things like these podcasts, and just support from great companies like you guys that make the payment processing so much easier.
Thank you.
Can't run everything through the DMs forever. But yeah, it's been a great transition, and it means the world to me that people come out for our food and I can make a living doing this.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think also having a great partner helps a lot. So if it wasn't for my wife, I'd probably be dead by now too. So the support network and the partnership always makes a really big difference. And it makes these, I think, milestones mean a lot much more, but also like you feel supported too, because it could be a very lonely road being an entrepreneur. It really is. So being able to have a strong support, and partnership system is always like very crucial, I think.
Yeah, no, I've said it many, many times. Without my wife, Leonor, there is no Heffer BBQ. So
yeah. Where did the name come from?
It actually comes from a 90s Nicktoon, Rocco's Modern Life.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
The cow, his name was Heffer.
Yeah.
And specifically the episode where he eats all of Rocco's barbecue behind his back. And we were struggling to come up with a name. And I'm like, well, that kind of has a nice ring to it. And then it's sort of, double meaning for like overindulgence, eating a little too much.
Yeah.
And then it just stuck. And then once the ball got rolling, we were like, well, we're not changing it now.
That's awesome. I love that cartoon.
And lots of people be like, you spelled heifer wrong. I'm like, it's not that heifer. It's like,
where do you guys draw your biggest inspiration from?
I find it's best to just draw inspiration from everywhere. I mean, I've been to live performances for music, and I've gained inspiration just from seeing their enthusiasm and their passion for it. On the food side of things, I'm just thankful that there's been a lot of people ahead of me that have done it on a really high level, and they've been willing to share that information. Like Evan Leroy at Leroy and Lewis Barbecue in Austin, Texas. He puts all of his information. Like, that's the thing that I love about the whole barbecue community is they don't tend to hide a lot of secrets.
Yeah.
They'll give you they'll get you 90% of the way there, but they just know that you have to put in your 10,000 hours in order to get there. There's inspiration to be drawn from everywhere. Like I enjoy seeing anyone who has a passion for anything, whether you're making knives, you're doing art, you're doing music. It's like that true passion comes through.
Right.
And that's where I get hyped from.
Yeah, passion is the biggest differentiator, I think. And I think that's where anything, even the most monotonous things, can become art. When you really see that person putting in the 10,000 hours, the craft. In the age of social media, right, where you have, and I know you guys are very proficient at social media, you guys have a great design, great branding. So it's like, starting a business almost hasn't been easier now, with social media and even with tools with CashRap. Curious to kind of hear from you a little bit of like, how has CashRap kind of helped your operations, at these pop-ups? And what would be something that you would say in terms of somebody that wants to start a pop-up, but they feel like it might be too complicated or expensive to get started?
That's one of my favorite things about CashDrop is we've been able to utilize it so many different ways. Back when we were still just working from the apartment, we were doing curbside to go, and it was a great system for that. We also utilized the POS system just for like direct sales. Most recently with our residency at Mars Brewing, we do a tableside drop, and it just the versatility of the system and the simplicity of it. Like, you can basically have anyone run it, and it's so versatile. You can use it in so many different ways depending on the type of event or the layout of the venue or what works and what doesn't. Um, so that's been how cash drop has been most useful to us.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that customer service is just top notch. I mean, y'all hooked us up with a printer, completely redid our menu, and set us up to. You guys set us up to succeed, and then all we have to do is take the ball and run with it. It just takes one extra thing off our plate. And when you're doing the kind of stuff that we're doing, that's invaluable. I mean, it's just tremendous.
I like to say that Cash Drop's mission is to kind of remove the excuses that all of us may have from having this idea and feeling you can't accomplish it, turn it into an actual business. Particularly like the communities, that I come from, Latino and business. I feel like there's you see so many people that just feel that they can't, and that's I think the biggest injustice of them all. So like I think we're always very passionate about being able to like just help make it a little bit easier, because there's so much other bullshit that you need to think about every other day,
Yeah, 100%.
I think historically, when you talk about the relationship between tech and service industry, it's never very positive. It's always like, a lot of the chefs that I've met, hate technology platforms like delivery companies. You always hear things like commissions and fees and like 30% this, and like it's a real life thing. And I feel like you have this time where you have these like giant monolith companies worth billions of dollars that were built on the backs of all these small businesses all over America, and they've never really been able to like share in the wealth, but B, also like doing business with these tech companies can come at a huge expense for your business.
I mean, that's one of the reasons we were glad that you guys actually approached us initially, because we had looked at a lot of those options and the cost to entry was just so high that we couldn't justify the expense based on our size and our revenue. And we have a lot of friends that are industry on all different levels, and we've seen people just get raked over the coals on so many of these things, especially during the pandemic. Like they were just taking advantage of people while they were down, and it's awful to see. So then when we saw you guys come through with a very simple model to where everyone gets taken care of, it's not exorbitant to the customer, to the business, and everyone gets their nice piece of the pie. It's the reason we recommend y'all to everybody.
Thank you.
It's like anytime we hear someone complain about we don't need to throw their names out there, we all know who they are. Is like, well, have you heard of this one? Have you heard of Cash Drop? Because we've been utilizing them for over a year now, and when I say there are no complaints, there are no complaints.
Thank you.
So yeah, no, definitely the stresses between the industry and technology are there, but hopefully you guys are going to force some other people to have to change the game and do things differently.
That's the goal. I think it's important because I feel like there's this romanticization of these like huge corporate overlords, right? Like Amazon and Tesla, and like, how is it that you can have people at that level when all of their employees hate them and all of their customers hate them? Like, there's something terribly broken in that system, and something that we are very, very intentional about fixing. I think that's where we really feel very strong tether to the community, because this is where we come from. We grew up in this, space. We know so many people that we grew up, that we know and we love, that are entrepreneurs, that are just trying to ultimately just put food on the table, have a better life, and provide a better opportunity for their loved ones. Like, that's what America is all about. If you reflect back and through your journey as a person, and you kind of reflect back to your point where you were the most vulnerable and the most, like in need of advice, and you were able to like give yourself that piece of advice to where you are now versus where you were then, what is that piece of advice that you give yourself?
I would have told myself to put me and this business first a lot sooner. That was the problem. The hesitancy, the just not being sure. and also just putting the emphasis on everyone else. Because in the last few months, since we've really narrowed our focus on the business, it has just gone exponentially, like upward. And I feel like that could have been accomplished much sooner. So yeah, that would probably be the number one thing that I would tell myself, you know, for a few years ago.
It's great advice. It really is. Last one, fun one. What's your favorite quote and why?
I suppose that the one that comes to mind initially is the, Gretzky's quote about you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's like, if you're scared to get in the game, if you're scared to put yourself out there and whatever your art or your creation or your product is, it's like you can guarantee no one will ever buy it if it ain't for sale.